Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Modular refineries. Senate slams Petroleum Commission over revocation of license. Plus, G7 says Taliban treatment of women may be crime against humanity. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First in our news tonight, the federal government has announced the 2022 mini-bid round to spur new oil exploration and drilling activities in the prospective deep waters offshore Nigeria. The government, through its Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, also announced that 3 modular refineries will refine crude oil in 2023, as this will boost in-country refining capacity, according to the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board. Both agencies stated these to journalists at oil sector events in Abuja, announcing the Nigeria mini-bid round, a series of bid rounds aimed at further development of the country's prospective petroleum basin. He said the exercise would be managed by the Commission in line with the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act, as the statutory body responsible for ensuring compliance with petroleum laws, regulations and guidelines in the Nigerian upstream petroleum industry. In another development, the Federal Executive Council has approved 386.7 billion naira for various projects in the Federal Ministry. The memorandum approved by the Council and the corresponding amounts earmarked for the projects after this week's meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja. The Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, said the Council had approved a memorandum for the provision of alternative power supply to Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, which he said had been disconnected from the national grid for 24 months due to insurgency. On legislative matters, Senate has postponed the finance bill till December 28. Senate President Ahmed Lawan, who made these announcements during plenary today, explained that the Senate was postponing the budget passage because of challenges in receiving the report on the 2023 budget from the Appropriations Committee. He added that the Appropriations Bill came to the National Assembly from the Executive with some problems, and when the committee tried to reconcile the figures, the challenge became obvious and difficult to deal with. An Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission (NUPRC) today drew the ire of the Senate during the legislative debate on the report submitted to it by the Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions. Senate consequently ordered the Commission to reallocate the oil field to its original owners, as earlier directed by the Presidency. Senate's resolutions were sequel to recommendations made to that effect by its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions. The Senator Ayo Akinyelure-led committee had, on the mandate given by the Senate, investigated petitions forwarded to it by Sir Daniel and Production Limited (CEPL) against NUPRC for alleged illegal and fraudulent revocation of Atala Marginal Field (OML 46) and its re-award to Halkin Exploration and Production Limited. In the meantime, the Deputy Governor, Financial System Stability, Central Bank of Nigeria, Aisha Ahmed, today addressed the House of Representatives over the latest policy by the Apex Bank. The policy, among others, sets limits to cash withdrawals at the deposit money banks and other financial institutions. According to Ahmed, the CBN observed that about 94% of personal transactions and 82% of corporate transactions had been electronic, implying that the majority basis with successes recorded in some of the states where it was launched. Responding to a question on why the move is coming a few months before the general elections, Ahmed explained that the CBN, as an independent body, approved the new cash withdrawal limits policy without political consideration. Meanwhile, House of Representatives has resolved to investigate the activities of illegal financial technology companies and mobile application lenders who threaten debtors for failing to repay loans. At the plenary today, the House mandated its Committee on Banking and Currency, Financial Crimes and Telecommunications to investigate alleged sharp practices and abuses by Fintech, online mobile digital loan apps, and companies in Nigeria and report within 4 weeks. The resolution was based on the unanimous adoption of a motion of urgent public importance moved by a member of the House, Ahmed Satomi. To the judiciary now, where a federal high court sitting in Abuja has affirmed the expulsion of Kenneth Udeze, a factional chairman of the Action Alliance AA, from the party. Giving the judgment at the Federal High Court for Abuja, the court order directing INEC to release the upload code to the party, saying that the case lacks merit. According to the judge, the court viewed that Kenneth is not a member of Action Alliance, hence his lack of statutes to institute any, which is the highest ruling organ of the party, had since 2019 suspended and subsequently expelled Kenneth Udeze from the party. Still on judicial matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has rejected an application to set aside its November 4 judgment, recognizing the candidates produced by the Adekunle Rufai application filed by Udeze, who was sacked as chairman of the party, was unmeritorious and proceeded to dismiss it. Udeze, whose suspension and expulsion as the AA chairman had been upheld in 2 judgments of the Court of Appeal, had applied to the Federal High Court Abuja to set aside the November 4, 2022 judgment, claiming it was obtained by fraud. INEC to accept the candidates submitted for next year's general elections by the Omoaje leadership of the AA and to reject those produced by Kenneth Udeze, among whom is Hamzat Al-Mustafa. Meanwhile, an Abuja High Court has suspended a criminal summon filed by the opposition People's Democratic Party (PDP) in Imo State, Ikenga Imo Ugochinyere, today. Reports say the criminal summons was instituted by Chinasa Nwaneri, personal assistant of special duties to Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, that Justice Hassan of FCT Federal High Court granted a restraining order and stay of the proceedings of the Magistrate Court pending the hearing of the application for judicial review filed by Ikenga. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency and the LEA intercepted 338 kg of psychotropic substance in the state, and the LEA commander, Gombe State Ekaite Egunwoke, disclosed this in a press briefing today in Gombe. Represented by the command spokesperson Henry Ihebuzo, Egunwoke said the substances were intercepted along the Gombe bypass in a truck coming from Onitsha, Anambra State to Gombe. She said the drugs seized were 178 kilograms of diazepam tablets, 106 kilograms of tramadol capsules, and 29 kilograms of Exor 5. She said the truck driver, Omar Bakura, was arrested and will be taken to court after investigations and peddling of hard drugs in the state, especially during the Yuletide and the upcoming general elections in 2023. On security matters now, troops of Operation Hadin Kai have eliminated 103 members of Boko Haram and Islamic State of West Africa State Province, ISWAP, in the past 3 weeks in the northeast. The Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Danmadami, stated this while commanders and 18 collaborators within the theater during the period. Danmadami noted that the troops rescued 30 abducted civilians, while 280 terrorists and their families, comprising 29 males, 73 females and 148 children, surrendered to the military across the theater of operation. In a related development, troops of Operation Delta Safe have discovered in 3 weeks. The Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Danmadabi, made this known while giving update of military operations in Abuja. Danmadabi said the troops also destroyed 953 cooking ovens, 68 wooden boats, 172 storage tanks, and 149 dugout pits within the period. He said the troops also recovered 5 AK-47 rifles, 8 pump-action guns, 3 locally made pistols, 3 Dane guns, several locally fabricated hand grenades with leg cuffs and chains, among others. According to the director, all recovered items, rescued civilians, and apprehended criminals have been handed over to the relevant authorities for further action. Elsewhere, the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria has had devastating effects on the country. This was the submission of the South-South Zonal Coordinator of the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons, Major General Ifyok Obot, proliferation of small arms and light weapons in the country. He solicited the support of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, noting that the responsibility of eradicating the proliferation of small arms and light weapons in Nigeria was possible through stakeholders' collaboration. Still on security, the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Gambo, says some personnel are colluding with. He made this known at the decoration of the newly promoted Rear Admirals in Abuja, where he warned that any personnel caught would be made to face the stiff penalty of the law. The Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Rabo, who was at the event, tasked the Navy with the elimination of crude oil theft in the country. In politics, the European Union is looking to deploy an election observation mission which consists of 11 election experts who will arrive in Abuja during the first half of January and 40 long-term observers who will join the mission to observe the February 25 and March 11, 2023 general elections. A statement by the High Representative Member of the European Parliament, Barry Andrews, has been appointed as Chief Observer for the mission to Nigeria. The High Representative and Vice President Joseph Borrell said the elections will be crucial for the consolidation of democracy in Nigeria and for the stability of the region. Still in politics, Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike says he will make his preferred president's adopted candidate nationwide. Reports say following the PDP presidential primary in May, where he lost out, Wike has been at loggerheads with Atiku Abubakar over the chairmanship of the Yocha Ayu. Recall that Wike, with 4 other PDP governors, known as the G5 or the Integrity Group, have insisted that Benue-born Ayu. Away from that, a 40-feet container today fell on vehicles plying the Sele bus stop along the Oshodi-Apapa Expressway, Lagos State, killing many commuters. Reports say a driver of one of the popular yellow commercial buses was immediately confirmed dead, while the other 2 managed to escape. Meanwhile, of PM gas station inward Sele Express. Back here, Akwa Ibomites have been urged to follow safety measures, especially while traveling, as they celebrate the Yuletide. Speaking on Spectrum Television's breakfast show Rise and Shine, the Public Enlightenment Officer and PRO, FRSC Akwa Ibom State, Paul James, advised drivers.
Christmas and New Year celebrations are usually packed with lots of activities for the festivities, leading to lots of human and vehicular movements. Most times, the festivity rush exposes people to accidents and criminal activities like getting robbed or being kidnapped. With this, it has become a norm for security agencies to deploy more personnel to protect citizens, as well as dish out security advisory. The Public Enlightenment Officer and PRO Federal Road Safety Corps, Akwa Ibom State, Paul James, who spoke on Spectrum Television.
Please let your family members know where and when you are traveling is important for safety reasons. You do not pay for that driver to go and then crash you on the road. So for that reason, don't sit back and allow the driver have his way, do whatever that he likes. We advise that when you are seated in a vehicle, please, where you observe the driver is being reckless, it's your duty and responsibility to also call that driver to order. Yes, you need to caution the driver because your safety is at stake. Should anything happen to that vehicle, you are also part of it. But where you observe the driver is not taking heed, then you can reach out to the management of that motor park and they will be able to call that driver.
To drivers to keep people safe.
Virtually every morning we go from one motor park to the other to ensure that we interface with drivers and passengers even as they board, to be able to reawaken their consciousness to those safety tips. We do this also at churches. We do it in schools, though schools are vacated now, but in churches, marketplaces, in fact, all public areas, we carry out sensitization programs. All is geared towards reawakening people's conscience to the issue of safety.
Just like other security agencies, the Federal Road Safety Corps has deployed safety measures during the Yuletide season. Edidio Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
Still to come in the news. Sam Bankman-Fried arrives in U.S. to face charges. Stay with us.
Season's greetings from Spectrum TV. One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding you, your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Bring you up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigerian. From issues on politics,
Hello, Nigeria. I remain committed.
security, education, health, lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyekan every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily. Exclusive.
Messi. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
When it comes to football, the passion is unrivaled and the heat never stops. Be a part of the unending action on Battle of the Fans. With expert analysis, previews and reviews of the biggest games in the biggest leagues, as well as football fan banter, 5 to 6:30 p.m. Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. only on Spectrum Television.
It is Cristiano Ronaldo! One goal! What a finish!
Battle of the Fans. Exclusive to Spectrum TV.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now in Africa, the UN Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, says there has been a relative but not insignificant improvement in the security climate of the Central African Republic. Lacroix stated this during an official visit to Bangui, the capital of the CAR. The UN Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations also stressed that there was more work to be done to ensure stability in the troubled Central African nation. Recall that Central Africa has been battling civil war since 2013. Still in Africa, a report by a group of independent United Nations experts has found that Rwanda's army engaged in military operations against DR Congo's military in the country's troubled east. The experts said there was substantial evidence of direct Rwandan army intervention and of Rwandan support for the region's M23 rebels in such forms as weapons, ammunition, and uniforms. The report comes as the Democratic Republic of Congo has repeatedly accused Rwanda of backing the M23. The militia has reportedly captured swathes of territory in the DR Congo's restive east since it emerged from dormancy late last year. Rwanda has repeatedly denied that it supports the rebels, but the United States and France, among other Western countries, the United Nations Security Council has voted unanimously to extend the U.S. peacekeeping mission in Congo, known as MONUSCO. The force was the target of deadly summertime protests by Congolese who said armed groups were still roaming the country's east and they were not being protected. Peacekeepers were also accused of retaliating against demonstrators, sometimes with force. On the foreign scene, lawmakers today passed a transgender rights bill allowing anyone 16 and over to change gender on their ID card, putting Spain on track to becoming one of the few countries to allow the change with a simple declaration. Approved by 188 votes with 150 against the 7 abstentions, the bill now moves to the Senate, where if left unchanged as on a person's national identity card, allowing them to request the change based on a simple statement. It also bans conversion therapies, promotes non-discrimination against LGBTQ people in the workplace, and seeks to advance the inclusion of transgender women, in particular, who tend to be disproportionately affected. So on the foreign scene, Polish President Andrzej Duda and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky have discussed Zelensky's visit to the United States. Duda's top aide Paweł Szrot confirmed this after the two met as Zelensky was traveling back from Washington. Szrot said both leaders had talked for almost 2 hours and also discussed the bilateral relations between Poland and Ukraine. Meanwhile, G7 foreign ministers say the Taliban's treatment of women and girls in Afghanistan may amount to a crime against humanity. In a statement released after holding virtual talks, ministers demanded that the ban on women attending university be reversed. They are engaged with the Afghan rulers. The Taliban rulers, who promised a softer rule when they returned to power last year, have drawn global outrage with their announcement this week banning women from higher education. Elsewhere, the state secretary in charge of competition policy at Germany's economy ministry, Sven Giergold, is asking Twitter to join other tech firms in being directly monitored by the European Commission. The senior German official observed that the company's erratic behavior under new owner and restrictions on the access to some links. In a letter to the European commissioners, Jagold called on the EU to launch an investigation and said the Commission should act to prevent what he called Twitter's anti-competitive behavior. In the meantime, Fiji's longtime Prime Minister says the military has been deployed to maintain law and order as the former coup leader refused to concede defeat after a close election. Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, who has led Fiji since coming to power in 2006 military putsch, cited unsubstantiated reports of post-vote ethnic violence as the reason for the deployment. The vote looks set to end Bainimarama's long rule, with an opposition coalition cobbled together by another former coup leader, STVNg Rabuka, securing enough seats for a parliamentary majority. Elsewhere, the head of the UN nuclear watchdog today met in Moscow with officials from Russia's military and state atomic energy company. This is as he pursues a long-running drive to set up a protection zone around a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Russian company Rosatom described the talks on measures needed to safeguard Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the surrounding region as substantive, useful, after another round of necessary discussions. Away from that, the United Nations Security Council has called for Myanmar's charter to release Aung San Suu Kyi as it adopted its first ever resolution on the situation in the turmoil-ridden Southeast Asian country. Reports say the adoption marks a moment of relative council unity in a year in which divisions have been heightened by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It also demands an immediate end to all forms of violence and asks for all parties to respect human rights, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. We have Blyden Ukem standing by.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts. Good evening. It's another business day and my name is Blyden Ukem. In the news, we begin with cryptocurrency outlook. Sam Bankman-Fried arrives in US to face charges. Sam Bankman-Fried, former boss of failed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, has arrived by plane in New York from the Bahamas to face fraud charges. The 30-year-old was extradited on suspicion of committing one of the biggest financial frauds in U.S. history, according to U.S. authorities. Two of his former associates have pleaded guilty to related charges. FTX co-founder Gary Wang and Caroline Ellison, former head of cryptocurrency trading firm Alameda Research, were both charged with roles in the frauds that contributed to FTX's collapse. They are both now cooperating with the Southern District of New York, according to reports. In Nigeria, regarding IMF reports, Nigeria and other African oil-producing nations face financial trouble. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has warned oil exporting countries in Africa to save earnings from the boom in crude oil price, could create a buffer to manage large swings in oil prices. However, on the part of Nigeria, the country's oil firm, Nigerian National Petroleum Company NNPC Limited, has failed to remit any amount to the Federation's accounts. This has contributed to the depletion of foreign reserves and dollar scarcity in Nigeria. Also, depreciation in Nigeria's foreign trade, with oil exports falling from 5.91 trillion naira in the second quarter of 2022 to 4.66 trillion naira in the third quarter of 2022. Selling Nigeria. Country to war risk insurance premium on Nigerian-bound vessels and cargoes. According to the Director General NIMASA, Dr. Bashi Jamo, the imposition of the war risk insurance on all Nigerian-bound cargoes was a deadly blow to the economy, as its negative impact on the cost of goods is felt by every Nigerian. Jamo said, Nigeria has done so much to stamp out piracy on its territorial waters and the Gulf of Guinea, adding that the country deserved the international insurance companies' consideration on the removal of the war risk insurance from vessels and goods destined for Nigeria. It's time for the Nigerian stock market report. At the end of today's trading session on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, an aggregate of 103 listed equities participated in trading, ending with 17 gainers and 14 losers. Regarding the performance of market indices, the benchmark All-Share Index inched up 24 basis points to close at 49,400. When compared with the previous trading day, today's data shows 68% decline in volume and 50% decline in turnover. Julius Berger Nigeria led the gainers with 9.91% share price appreciation, closing at 23 naira 30 kobo per share, while UPDC Real Estate Investment Trust came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 6.45% at 2 naira 90 kobo per share. Meanwhile, First Bank Nigeria Holdings recorded the highest volume of 29.1 million traded shares. This is all on business news. I'm back to Xavier Roberts for the rest of the news.
Stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. We move on now to health, where Uganda has announced that it had received shipments of 2 more trial vaccines to test against a strain of Ebola responsible for dozens of deaths in the East African nation. Since authorities declared an Ebola outbreak on September 20, Uganda has reportedly registered 142 confirmed cases and 56 deaths. But the spread has slowed in recent weeks, sparking hope that the epidemic could be on its way out. The outbreak has been caused by the Sudan strain of the virus, for which there is currently no vaccine. Health personnel, the NMA chairman, Dr. Kunle Ashimi, who gave the warning during a news conference in Abeokuta, urged patients and their relations to channel their complaints to the appropriate quarters. He said the patient or relative should express their grievances and avoid attacking doctors. In sports now, Super Eagles have ended the year as Africa's 5th best team after a disappointing 2022 that saw them fail to make the World Cup. In a November 2022 FIFA ranking released today, the 3-time African champions are now 35th in the global pecking order. Morocco are the #1 team in Africa and 11th in the world, with Senegal at 19th, Tunisia at 30th, and Cameroon at 33rd to complete the continent's first 5. It's still in sports now. Former UFC champions Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman remain in the top 3 of the latest UFC pound-for-pound rankings, despite both losing their belts in 2022. The rankings were reportedly updated after the final pay-per-view of the year at UFC 282 in Las Vegas. Reports say Adesanya takes the number 3 spot in the latest rankings after he had previously dropped to number 5. This is the first time since unifying the belt in 2019 that Adesanya is no longer sitting atop the middleweight division. Meanwhile, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola says he is so sorry for Gabriel Jesus over the Arsenal star's current injury blow. Jesus joined Arsenal from Manchester City last summer after spending 5.5 years at the Etihad Stadium. The Brazil international has played a vital role in the Ghana's rise to the summit of the Premier League. Reports say the Brazilian is expected to spend at least 3 months on the sideline after undergoing knee surgery. Meanwhile, the 25-year-old picked up the problem during Brazil's World Cup campaign in Qatar. Elsewhere, Baines has claimed neither Jurgen Klopp nor Pep Guardiola were ready to take Carabao Cup clash too seriously. Manchester City host Liverpool at the Etihad as both teams resume domestic action following the 2022 World Cup. According to reports, one of the two Premier League heavyweights will make it into the quarter-final, while the other will see the first chance to win silverware disappear. Meanwhile, Baines feels the impact of the World Cup on the players and the status of the Cup itself will have an influence. In entertainment news, famous Nigerian comedian Bright Okwocha, better known by his stage name Basketmouth, has announced the dissolution of his 12-year-old marriage to his wife Elsie Okwocha. The popular entertainer made the disclosure today in a post on his verified Instagram and Facebook handles. Basketmouth, who had celebrated his wife's 44th birthday in October, in the post said the decision was sequel to much deliberations between him and the wife. He, however, promised that they would both continue to work together to ensure their children have desired parental love and care. Hitting the 3,500 episode turning point today. Reports say, in honor of the monumental event, Africa Magic is releasing a documentary titled Through the Decades, a tinsel story, which follows all the changes, faces, improvements, and losses the show has experienced over the 14 years of being aired on television. Meanwhile, the 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party LP, Peter Obi, today campaigned at the Liberation Stadium in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital. Obi, a former governor of Anambra State, was at the rally with his wife, Margaret, and several stalwarts of the party and Presidential Campaign Council. The musical duo of Peter and Paul, popularly called P-Square, entertained the crowd made up of LP supporters. However, embattled allies of Obi, Doyin Okupe, who the party's Presidential Campaign Council insisted is still a member, was absent at the rally today. On our website, spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, wishing you a terrific night rest. Bye-bye for now.